So we live in this world where information is just so very accessible, where we can just go to Google, type in a question, and get an answer immediately. I think for the very first time, honestly, in Disney Lorcana's existence, information is not easy. It's not obtainable within moments. It's not just doesn't exist in this fashion that people have become accustomed to. With the release of Shimmering Skies, it was the first set released of Disney Lorcana that did not include Pixelborn. And I think that the majority of the, competitive scene became so reliant on a digital client that we weren't even supposed to have. And I see all of these comments and rumors and these like accusations of like, hey, uh, the metagame hasn't shifted, or oh, nothing has changed. Oh, it's just more of the same. I don't think any of that's true. I just think for the first time, the narrative is different. The narrative that we as competitors have to like go into a store and play card games. We have to play games through webcams or find time to meet with our teammates that we trust with information. I also find that as like a viewer or as a a content absorber in a way, there is far less information out there to even consume. It just doesn't exist. Before you had several streamers that every single day for 6, 7, 8 hours they would stream Pixelborn, and whether or not the decks that they were streaming were even the best decks, they were defining the metagame. And I think it's just very interesting how all of that has really changed. And I'm sure there's people out there that hate it, like really, like they probably actually hate it, and that's fine. Like I get it. Maybe you're the type of player that like needs a Pixelborn to exist. It needs a digital client to exist to like get the most out of your playtime, and I respect that. I do, but at the same time, I love it. I love that we're living in this unknown. I love that we have to embrace this moment of innovation and creativity. I also love that, like, in all realism, that all of the events, I would say, up to this point, people have probably been doing it with training wheels. All of the top competitive players that, are playing in these events that, in all honesty, don't award a Nationals invite, don't award a Golden Mickey or a Cinderella or a Rapunzel playmat, like things like that. Like winning $350 at a local is great. It is. It's great. It's a nice achievement to like say, oh yeah, I did that. But winning a Nationals invite with a deck that no one has seen yet, I mean, that's storytelling. That's what we live for. That's what, as competitive players, we are here to break the game. We are here to break the meta. And it's just not worth it at this lower tier level of events. It's the reason why you keep seeing Ruby Sapphire be the most played and the most successful deck. It's the reason why Ruby Amethyst to start the metagame was the most successful looking deck. Amber Steel, couple cards here, couple cards there. You're not seeing, in my opinion, the greatest levels of innovation of Shimmering Skies. I genuinely believe that Shimmering Skies is the best set since Chapter 1. Honestly, I really do. From a broad scope and a power level scheme, I think the cards in Shimmering Skies are honestly very up to par with the power level of Chapter 1. But the metagame hasn't, it just hasn't been there. The information doesn't showcase that. And I really do think that it's because of a lack of information. It's a lack of innovation. And I just think it's astounding that this quickly from a point A to point B, from even just having 2 or 3 weeks of digital client for Ursula's return, it was enough to like keep that away. It was enough to keep it at bay because it seemed as if things were really changed and we already had everything we needed to know. I just I don't see that anymore. And I get it, I understand why people need it and why people want it, but the truth is I love card games like this. When I played Magic, MTG Arena wasn't a thing yet. Like there was MTGO, but it's not the same, right? Same thing for us. Like there's Tabletop Simulator, but it's not the same. It's not that same vibe, not that same feel. I played online clients. Hearthstone, very similar, where it's like within a week or so, metagame can be defined. Uh, Legends of Runeterra, another one that you get some new stuff, you acquire it, you define it. Like at least in those games, you have to acquire things. You have to like actually build towards something. Pixelborn just gave you everything you wanted, and you could just explore infinitely based on your own time. And I think a lot of that exploring, again, whether or not it was actually good or not, was irrelevant. It was more or less that like this was the only information, so therefore it must be the best in a lot of cases. And I just think that it's so insane that people are like worried or upset or distraught that Shimmering Skies isn't, you know, this profound look to the metagame yet. I, for one, hope, I really hope that this weekend in Birmingham and in Vegas, that very influenced Shimmering Skies decks are successful, because I truly believe that there is untapped potential in Shimmering Skies. I truly believe that you're going to see this showcase of how good this set actually is. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong on one scale versus another scale. We can have a whole other conversation about the 2-game format and like what that does and like how that really represents a tournament structure. But the truth is that it won't be because of lack of effort, It'll be because like, hey, I won one all day. No, but seriously, I just think that Shimmering Skies in the current metagame, where in the decks that it's been most successful, it's been like an addition, like Ruby Sapphire, small additions to like make it more consistent. Ruby Amethyst, maybe no additions from Shimmering Skies. They might not even be playing the library or any new cards. Amber Steel, picked up Pete, picked up Naveen, things like that. Daisy Duck if they want it. Aggro decks, really did pick up Daisy, but aside from Daisy, they're mostly just other cards and things like that. The Emerald decks have now this like distinct choice of like, hey, do I go with what has been successful, play my Diablo deck and like move them at life, or do I try and be different and like create this metagame where Clarabelle is just a defining character? Can Mother Gothel be a defining character? I think Emerald is in the most unique position because I do think that Emerald got the most playable cards. So I think that that's one of those things where you've seen smudges of it in meta reports and things like that, and deck profiles here and there, but very itty bitty smudges of success. And I don't know. I just keep going back to this like concept of, is it really just this narrative that the game needed a digital client to basically set a pace for the set, even if it was inaccurate? I would really love to be able to go back and explore into the Inklands without Pixelborn. Honestly, I would. I would love to go back to Chapter 1 and explore Chapter 1 without Pixelborn. And I know that that is very difficult because cards were, like, obviously insane to even acquire, to even play in tournaments, so therefore, like, the lack of information would have been even probably more drastically worse because it just wouldn't have existed in most cases. But it's just that point I'm trying to get across of, like, it has nothing to do, in my opinion, like in my educated opinion of a card game player for 25 years, it has nothing to do that there isn't innovation to be had from Shimmering Skies, as much as it's just a sheer lack of information. Because we do not have a digital client anymore that can spit out 100,000 games, there's just not the information out there to be had. But what I can say is there's proof that there's tournaments globally that are having more players than they did a year ago. So you did take that Pixelborn player and you put them in a card store. That was a successful thing that we now have that. The information might be coming out less and less. It might be harder to obtain because there's just not, you know, I don't honestly like 50% more content out there for people to watch on a daily basis. There is an absolute lack of competitive content or even just like gameplay content in general, right? Like there's just it doesn't exist anymore because it's too difficult. Tabletop Simulator is not ideal. Getting together, setting up a whole stream, it's not ideal. It's not easy. But it's not to say that Shimmering Skies is failing. It's really just to say that the lack of information and not the lack of innovation, but I would say probably I guess the more security of information. You know, the players with information that maybe maybe they broke the metagame. You know, maybe there's a deck out there that no one's seen yet because it's been so kept secret that come this weekend in Birmingham or in Vegas, like deck just goes 9-0 and wins the entire event and everyone's like, "Wow, we missed it." Totally possible in this day and age because there is a lack of information. I just think it's very interesting. I think that this is the first time that you really saw, a month without a major tournament, or really it was like 5 weeks without a major tournament. And it's also the first set that we didn't have a digital client to kind of just like crutch. Honestly, it's almost like a crutch to the competitive player or to like the average competitive player, to where they're like, oh, like I just saw my favorite streamer play this, so I'm playing this, or I saw this video on one of the gameplay channels and I just really liked it. And it's like they just don't exist right now because it's difficult to do. It's difficult to have. There's also, there's a lot more at stake now in competitive tournaments. So because, there's only 96 invites, to get, and honestly right now there's only 32 more invites to acquire for, North American nationals. There's only 16 more invites to acquire for European nationals. Like that's tight. That's tough information to get past. So I really am a firm believer that this weekend I think Shimmering Skies is going to be a highlight in the metagame. I think you're going to have brand new decks. I am praying that those brand new decks are able to be successful in the 2-game format. I do think that that's like a whole other thing that I could go off on a rabbit hole, and I don't want to do that in this video. But yeah, I really wanted to just put something out there of like my thoughts and my honest opinion of the metagame itself, that while it looks, contained and innocent and just like a small evolution from the previous, with like obviously sprinkles of this and that, I am a firm believer that by the time we get to Seattle and we have 2 DLCs already and 3 weeks of set championships and just all of this information coming out in these big ways, in these bigger events, that you are going to see Shimmering Skies for how I have seen it since day one, where I think the set is phenomenal. I think there are like 25 to 30 very playable cards in the set, which is honestly very high in some cases. Maybe it's average, maybe it's a little above average, but I feel like in the last few sets there's a world that you could say that maybe only 10 or 15 cards are really that dramatic and really that playable, where in this set I do think it's a takeover set. I do think it's an evolution set where it's like, hey, these are foundations that are going to be built on. Then with these foundations we can actually mold and make the game look differently. But without the information, without 10, 15, 20 people streaming daily, 5, 6, 7, 8 hours, people to be in chat, people to have this community of growing this leaderboard and all these things, like we just don't have it. It's a lot less information out there. It really is. It's just that simple. And I don't know. I think I'm okay with it. From the last few games that I have played competitively, I did not have an online client. I just, it didn't exist. And it didn't bother me. It didn't make me any worse. It just made made you had to work a little harder, if I'm being honest. Like, you had to figure out things for yourself. There wasn't going to be some, like, skip go button or easy button, like it didn't exist. So, yeah, that's my rant for today. I'd love to hear the comments about it. I'm sure people are going to agree or disagree and things like that. But the honesty is that this set is great. I think this metagame is going to be great. I think if the metagame is not great at the highest competitive level of experience, it's probably because of the 2-game format. But, again, that's another video. See you next time.